Hey, who doesn't like to go on an excursion from now and again, for now and again, from now and again, every now and again, but not a runway excursion? Welcome to the Super Pilotish channel. My name's Graham Wilson, and today in my basement from the armchair, I'll be talking about, a little excursion that a plane took out in Hawaii off of the runway. And we'll just kind of talk about that. That happened on Monday. Yeah, so it was kind of going around social media and on the news, and every time, some airplane goes off the runway, it's a big deal. Well, this one it kind of splooshed into the water, so you might have seen it, but it's usually going off a runway is not such a big deal. It happens a lot more than you think, and it's usually not big planes. So little airplanes will kind of get a little off of a narrow runway every once in a while. Usually it's no big deal. But yeah, this one it's in the media and stuff, and everyone wants to lay blame all of a sudden. That's everybody loves it, want to point some fingers. Well, if you're actually in the aviation industry and you're pretty serious and professional about it, it's like, yeah, all right, let's do some paperwork, let's do some more training, let's find out the root cause, of course, and make sure it doesn't happen again. So in this case, there was 9 crew on board of a Poseidon P-8A aircraft. All the plane spotters out there, they would know all the details about this plane, because the plane spotter people know everything, more than pilots do. But we can fly better. Unless you are a pilot who is a plane spotter, then you're like really good. But yeah, so the plane is it's kind of a military version of a 737, which is, it's a pretty common big jet that you see flying around at all your normal airports, bigger airports, I guess. And yeah, so it's there. I'm going to sound really smart here because I looked it up on Wikipedia, but it's so it's for maritime patrol and reconnaissance. And so they got all kinds of sensors and radio stuff, and they're looking for submarines. But what I didn't know was that they can be equipped with torpedoes and missiles. I was like, that's kind of weird to think about a 737 with torpedoes and missiles, but it's military. It's a Navy plane. It was a Navy plane that went off, it's kind of whoopsed off the end of the runway into the drink. But yeah, it was, and everyone, you think, "Ooh, you land in the water, it's so dangerous." I was looking at pictures of it and stuff, and it just kind of, the runway comes right up to the edge of the water, and yeah, there wasn't much room for air, and oops, they went in there, and but the water is very shallow there. If you notice that any of the pictures you see of it, like on my little thumbnail that I had on this video, for YouTube, it's I think it's still sitting there on their landing gear. It's very shallow water, and you can see that both the tail and the wingtips they're out of the water. So if it was actually in deeper water, and it'd be like, big airplanes do float, if the hull, if the fuselage or the wings, like if it's not damaged too much, the airplane will float, especially the big jets, because they're pressurized, which means they're airtight, which means they're watertight. So you got like a big, I don't know, like a like you got yourself a pop bottle with the lid on it, and you stick it in the swimming pool or in the lake, and there you go, it's floating around. Just airplanes will do that too. But yeah, so it wasn't really that big of a deal. Although for all the crew involved, it's a pretty huge deal, and it feels terrible when it happens to you. But live and learn, and this will probably, no doubt, have some sort of training recommendations, and someone's going to be making a new rule. Standard operating procedures will be changed, probably. That's what happens with every accident. And yeah, so, and mishap. Sorry, this is the military. They don't have accidents, they have mishaps. So anyways, yep, and the plane was damaged. I could see the radome looked like it either broke off or got smushed in. So once a plane is damaged, then that's your highest category of military mishap. But yeah, so I was saying they all got away. They all got away. And so that's cool. So what happened here? And I'm going to give you my top 5 armchair guesses. Oh yeah. Oh, and then another thing too, just to dispel a few myths. On social media, on the Twitters and the X, there was something going around there that they were. A picture was there of a bunch of female naval aviators or crew. Anyways, I don't know if they're pilots, but yeah, and it wasn't an all female crew. Some people like to put that, they get all goofy about that, but it was just someone there trying to get clicks. And if you read that, if you've ever seen that picture on the Twitter, the X, if you go right to the very bottom of the tweet post, whatever we call it now, there's like, note, this picture is from something else and I'm lying to you. Like, I don't know why people do that, but you get the clicks. So I got my I can't really point fingers because I got a super clickbait thumbnail on this one here. So let's get to it. The top 5 super pilotish mishap guesses for this specific incident, and the number 1 is weather. And that could be basically there's always weather involved in any type of any kind of oops in aviation. And so the weather on this one, it was rainy, and yeah, there was apparently the visibility from what I read was about a half mile. Not that great, but still, I'm sure within the limitations of what they could do within their military rules and everything like that. So, and what was the wind like? I don't know. I saw a windsock, a little wind indicator kind of thing that looked like it might have been a bit of a tailwind, which would explain a lot. Rain, tailwind. If that's true, I don't know. And the thing is, then you could always say, oh, why would they continue the approach like this? Wind can change on you, especially during a storm, and then they're right by the water, they're over the land, they're over the water. There's like all kinds of weird wind things that can happen. And apparently it was a training flight, so that kind of puts a little something in there too, and I'll get to that a little bit later. Okay, let's write this down. And dropping my marker. Let's get that. Okay, dollar store red for safety. Safety is always red. Okay, number 2 here, we're going to talk about what was the experience level. So the level of experience of the crew. So if it's a training episode, if it's a training flight, then they probably spent an adequate amount of hours in a simulator for that plane, and then they're probably good to go. And I'm sure they got lots of other experience, and they but would a seasoned military naval aviator be doing that kind of stuff with that type of weather, and who knows what schedule they had to stay on it. So there's a lot of generally more experience is better for any type of pilot, but it doesn't mean that somebody with a low level of experience can't be totally safe. I mean, people with all levels of experience have mishaps in the military, accidents or occurrences in the civilian world. So, I mean, I don't know. There could have been some sort of training system that needs to be looked at. So, but the level of experience, that's a factor. It's maybe not the factor, but it's a factor. And hey, Nefarious, welcome to the show. Welcome, everyone. Feel free to join in the chat. Okay, number 3. Now, everyone wants to point fingers right away at the pilot, right? But what if the crew, in this case, but we have no idea whatsoever, and we probably never ever will know, because it's in the military. You're never really going to know the full story. But from my armchair quarterbacking position, I got the armchair out today. I can do whatever I want. So, okay. So it could possibly be some sort of mechanical issue there too. If you have a wet runway, and I don't know exactly how the anti-lock brake system works on a 737, or if it's the Poseidon P8. Like if it's exactly the same braking system, it might be tuned up a bit more because it could be heavier, lighter, longer range, bigger fuel. I don't really know. But yeah, big planes like that, they all have like the anti-lock or anti-skid brakes, just like you have in modern cars, like newer cars. But they usually don't kick in until you're at a slow enough speed. So that's where you have thrust reversers until it gets down to a certain speed. Then you just jam the brakes and they automatically keep it from skidding. That's a tricky thing to do. I know from if you ever go from, say, you get a side gig flying like a PC-12, like a little plane or something like that, and you're used to flying big jets where you just land, you just jam the brakes. That's a great way to blow out or like to burn up tires on like lighter airplanes and corporate planes and stuff like that. So be careful if you're if you're retiring from the big guys and you go into a little jet or something, or a little King Air or something. Watch out for laying on the brakes. But yeah, for these guys, once it gets to a certain speed, boom, the anti-lock brakes kick in. Now, if that is on a runway, and I don't know the surface condition of the runway either, they could be pretty slippery if it's heavy rain. And I did an episode, I think, before about hydroplaning. Just like your car, if it's really wet, you jam on the brakes, you could be sliding. Same thing with an airplane. So, but maybe one of the brakes didn't work or it didn't melt. Maybe it was set up wrong. Maybe a mechanic made a mistake there. Maybe the thrust reversers weren't working at equal thrust, so it might be yawing the airplane, and then it will take a lot longer to stop. So there's all kinds of mechanical things that could be wrong there. Maybe the spoilers didn't deploy the way that they're supposed to, or it was an asymmetric deployment of them. Only one of them went up, and that would affect things too. So we really don't know, but I'm talking about it anyways because I love being in the armchair. It's actually a pretty comfortable old wooden chair. I think my mom got it years ago. My mom got this chair years ago as at a yard sale, and she gave it to me when I moved away. Okay, so here we go. Number four. Okay, of my top 5 super pilot-ish mishap guesses, because I'm guessing here today, is and it's always a factor with any type of flying, is fatigue. How long were they up there flying? And if you're flying around for a long time, like those planes can do, and you got the added stress of being on a training flight and someone's watching you, and you're like, oh, I got to do great here. The stress level's up higher. You're going to get tired faster. And especially if you're not used to that type of plane, you're concentrating a lot more. I'm sure that they were more fatigued than normal if they were like fully trained, fully rested, everything like that. And plus, you're going for a check ride. You can never sleep the night before. So I'm sure that was like a little factor in there. But all it takes is like this little factor plus this little factor plus this little factor in this one and this one. And then we're sliding off the end of the runway. Oops. And I really find it, I think in the civilian world, I don't think it would quite happen exactly the same way that it happened here, because military is a little different. Their risk tolerance is a little bit higher than when you got a whole bunch of passengers that can sue you in the back. So, okay. And now here's a weird one that you will not, most pilots and everybody will not even think of this one, but I did. And this is because it's a training mission. I'm going to take a while to write this out in full. Okay. I got to make sure I spell it right too. And this, what I'm going to be talking about here is it's a psychological term. Oh, big, long. I'm taking my time writing this. Wow. That's a good. Did I spell that right? Yeah, okay. Yeah. Diffusion of responsibility. Now, this is a weird one. Okay. It's something that it's a diffusion of responsibility that can happen. It's a psychological phenomenon that has been documented and tested and pretty much proven that like this is the way that humans work. We are social beings. We might act differently by ourselves than if we're with someone else or in a great big group. Like you always hear about like mob mentality and stuff like that. Well, that's kind of one of the things. Is I'm not saying that the crew of this unfortunate airplane were mobs, a bunch of mob guys smashing windows. But that mob mentality kind of comes from the diffusion of responsibility. So if you're in a group, like if you're by yourself, you're walking down the street, are you going to pick up a brick and like toss it through a window? Like, no one does that. Like you get caught, like you're a loser, like whatever. But you get a great big mob all pumped up, and there's going to be a few people in there and be like, yeah, I'll toss that brick, because the responsibility of tossing the brick through the window is now the responsibility is diffused into the mob. So I'm not 100% responsible for doing this now. In their head, it's like, well, I'm only about 1% responsible. I'll light a car on fire. I'll be a jerk like that. So, yeah, so that's at the big mob mentality thing. And then it can go into smaller and smaller things where if you are driving down a lonely country road and there's a farmer there with the hood up on his truck, you can see some steam coming out of the radiator. You're gonna pull over and say, hey, you okay? I got a bottle of water here in the car. We could throw that in the rad. Something like that. But how many people stop when like someone is on a busy freeway and someone's there with the hood up on their car? Everybody just drives by. No one stops, because they're with the rest of the traffic. And then they're like, someone else will get it. I'm only like 10% responsible for 1% responsible for helping out this dude. And so that's the way that is. But that can also happen in the cockpit, is what I'm saying. And so even if you have, and like I've noticed that with being a flight instructor, that when I'm flying with a student, they're all cool. They'd be like their responsibility of being a pilot is less because I'm there too. And anything the student makes a mistake on, I'm going to catch. That's my job. So, and so if you are doing a training environment where I think pretty much everybody that is in aviation, like it'll get this type of training will be touched upon, the diffusion of responsibility, and most crew resource management training that you get, especially if you're getting into like multi-crew training like this airplane had. And if you're going to be a check ride, guy sitting in the jump seat or girl sitting in the jump seat conducting the ride. So what could happen there is that you have maybe a couple of crew there that are getting trained, but there's someone else out there that's a lot more experienced sitting behind you. So now that you might not be 100% on your game because you're expecting the guy in the back, even if it's kind of subconsciously, you're expecting the trainer in the back to kind of catch any of your mistakes. And so that is something that can happen. And pilots have to remind themselves that the diffusion of responsibility within the cockpit, it's a real thing. There have been other accidents in the past where that was a contributing factor. Can't really think of them off the top of my head, but I know they're out there. Like because things happen on training exercises all the time. I know one, and a lot of times you'll see if guys are landing airplanes or pilots are landing airplanes they forget to put the wheels down. A lot of times there's an instructor or an examiner on board when that happens, because you're expecting the other person to catch. Oh, you forgot your wheels to go down. I've seen that a couple times happen. So not with me. Knock on wood. All right. So anyways, that you watch out for the diffusion of responsibility in a training scenario. And then you got all these other little factors, such as, so you got your diffusion of responsibility going on. Oh, how's your weather? Tailwind, rain. Yeah, how experienced are you? How well did you do in that simulator session before? Mechanical stuff, not much you can do about that. Um, Usually, like especially in the military and like big jets and stuff like that, there's the maintenance is usually top notch. In let's just say the Western world, reputable airlines and reputable militaries. Yeah, you go to some some shady military somewhere, they'll just say, "Yeah, take the plane up," and then they end up ejecting or whatever. Okay, fatigue. That's always a factor in aviation. It's a I'm, I'm really surprised that for fatigue how not seriously they take that. Like I think it should be taken a lot more seriously, but that's just me. Uh, the insurance companies will will eventually figure that one out, and then diffusion of responsibility. That's how I think some 9 crew members got their swimming experience on Monday out in Hawaii. Well, luckily, the water is pretty warm out there. That's not too bad. I wouldn't want to go swimming in Alaska. Doesn't take long to freeze up and get hypothermia and stuff. That's not too cool. But I'm looking at my little cheat sheet here. Oh, another thing here too. So what will happen most likely after this is, there's going to be some sort of an investigation, and chances are the military, the Navy investigators, when they're looking at this, they will there's going to be a whole bunch of data that they can pull from, whether it's the flight data recorder, so that records everything that's going on in the airplane. Pressures, temperatures, what any little sensor, whatever the gauges are saying on the airplane, that's all recorded. What else would there be? G loading, so if it can tell the first time that the wheels hit, how hard it hits, stuff like that. Another thing too, I was going to mention there that if it's rainy like that and you're in a big jet, from what I hear, it's better to plant it on there really good. And if you're training, you don't want to slam it on the runway because you think the trainer is going to go, "Oh, that was a hard landing." If it's rainy, you want to make sure there's no the least amount of lift being generated from the wings when you touch down. That way your brakes can engage better, faster. And then, so what was I going to say? Yeah, so there's going to be a huge investigation. Cockpit voice recorder, everything that's on the plane, it gets recorded during takeoff and landing, especially. And so they'll be able to really get to the bottom of it. We might not know because it's the military. We might not know what's going on there. But chances are after this, I'll bet you it's going to be a little bit safer out there for people flying those types of jets. So, everyone walked away. They always say in aviation, what is it? Every landing you can walk away from is a good one. And if you can use the plane again, it's a great one. So this one here was just a good landing. So, oh well, that's the way that goes. And we got the rave shaman in here too. Shaman. So that's about it for today's show. I'm going to bump. I don't know. We'll see if there's any little interesting comments or questions here in the chat. This is hilarious. Okay, Rave Shaman's first job was at McDonald's. At some point, there was someone watching me over my shoulder. Was so nervous I accidentally locked him in the freezer for an hour. Okay, so that would still be considered if it was a military McDonald's, that would be considered a mishap. But because there was no damage or anyone hurt, it would be kind of a lower level mishap. So, not the end of the world. That's hilarious. Okay. Ooh. We got another. I'm not going to bring up Rave Shaman's talking about his uncle there, but sorry to hear that. Okay. Okay, here we go. Talking about some fatigue. It's a strange one. I myself don't notice it until I'm making mistakes, at which point I'm way gone. And then you got a dog to force him to take breaks. Yeah. Generally, for the way it works is that when your attention span, and this is all pretty much psychologically documented too. Uh, and in we kind of get trained in this. It gets touched on within human factors and crew resource management of aviation. Is that your attention span? So, yeah, generally your attention span's right around an hour. That's why if you ever see a 90-minute movie, usually somewhere around an hour, something big happens. Oh, they captured the villain, or something like that, and that wakes you up. Your average attention span's about an hour, and then if you take like about a 10-minute break, then your attention span's good for about 50 minutes. Then you take a 10-minute break, and then your attention span's good to 40, and so on and so on and so forth, all the way down. So you're after a 10-minute break, it's getting 10 minutes less, 10 minutes less, to 10 minutes less, to the point where you take a 10-minute break, your concentration's down to 10 minutes, and then you're done for the day. So that's why, like, if you look at a 9 to 5 job, it makes absolutely no sense. If you're doing some kind of office work, actually makes no sense at all to do a 9 to 5 job, because everyone's like, no one's doing any work at all from 4 to 5. Their brain's all fried. Like, you just don't have the you don't have the attention span for that, unless you're like some kind of superhero workaholic type person, but that's only, whatever, 5% of the population. So yeah, but don't forget to take those breaks. Okay, and yeah, interesting. Well, all right. What's Rave Shaman saying? He thinks is autism related. Who knows? My attention span is for as long as I'm interested. If it's a big programming project, I can start running in the 40 plus hours, at which point I'm running code. Yeah, that's one thing. Like, everybody's different. And so in general, if you're looking at the normal bell curve distribution of people, most people are sitting in the middle there, and that's what I'm talking about with attention spans. I've known guys that they could study for 24 hours straight and go write an exam and just get A plus. They can just ace an exam and study in 24 hours straight. I don't know how they do it, and it wasn't like chemical induced either. It was just like, wow, I don't know how they do that. They just like do nothing for the whole semester and just jam it all in 24 hours. Boom, they got it. Now, how long they retain the information after that, I don't know. But yeah, that's the way attention span works generally. Okay, yeah, that's about it for today. So what we are going to do is see, what day is today? Wednesday. Okay, so I'll be back on Friday, because I do this Monday, Wednesday, Friday at noon Eastern, and we'll kind of shut her down. So thank you for watching. Bye.